So September comes and you go to Cuba, and what was it like to be there?
Well, we actually went in October,
Oh, okay.
so it was over Webster's fall break. Has a fall break in the middle of October, so it kind of worked out perfectly, and it was remarkable. There was a lot that we didn't know, that we never could really get enough answers on, which made the whole thing kind of an adventure from start to finish. So, like questions like, can we get enough tomatoes to have Bella destroy all these tomatoes, right? Can we get the gallon of theatrical blood that I have to take with me through customs? All kinds of questions like that. And then we couldn't bring any of our set, so we had to depend on a kind of contacts that we had in Cuba, and the sort of creativity and improvisational ability of my students, both the technical side and the actors, to kind of get the show together once we got on the ground.
Now, I remember that the production that you did at Webster had the stage bisecting the audience.
Yeah.
Were you able to use that alignment again, or?
We were. Mostly, it was the theater turned out to be beautiful. It was in the Las Carolinas Theater, which is the home of a dance company called Retazos, which so it was this beautiful black box, totally open, wonderful rectangle, with some set seating at the sort of downstage end. So, but it wasn't a proscenium. So what we did is we created a kind of that alley with audience on the end and then audience on both sides. So it sort of turned into basically a thrust. So we did have to adjust some staging and some blocking when we got there, but the show, I think, needed to stay. I mean, it was made, and the spirit of the thing was made for that close kind of relationship with the audience. And so in the end, we decided that was pretty important to keep.
And were you able to still have the wine glasses hanging over?
Sadly, no. We didn't get the wine glasses, which were a beautiful element of the set. What ended up happening was it was much more spare. We were happy to find table and chairs and some benches. There was a lot of potted plants just because it's a tropical country, and so there, like in the theater and in these patios around the theater, there was a lot of flowers and plants that we used to kind of decorate the stage. And then, of course, we were able to get the bathtub, which was the remarkable feat. Like, how do you find a bathtub in Havana? Well, we asked and hoped, and it worked. But this is the great. One of the things I love about traveling is the necessity for improvisation. And it's one thing if it's just improvising, like where we're going to go to dinner tonight, but when we're trying to put together a show that has a kind of artistic integrity and sort of respects the vision of all the great designers who we couldn't bring with us to Havana, it was important that we have these elements. So the improvisation that we had to do in this case was we got the tub, and it was this, it took 6 guys to carry this thing, and it was terribly dirty and hadn't been used. And so the actor, Caroline, who played Lydia, who gets in the tub, we were like, okay, here, you clean the tub because you're the one who's going to have to get in it every night. And then we found out it didn't hold any water. So we thought, what do we do? And my colleague Gad Guterman came up with this beautiful idea that we would fill the bathtub with flowers. So we went out, and I think we spent a few $100s on flowers, roses and other kinds of flowers, and filled the bathtub with flowers so that when Lydia comes in off the boat, haggard, sees this vision, this bathtub full of flowers, and says, I'm going to get in it, basically. And so she takes off her wedding dress, and then we have this beautiful image of this woman in a bathtub picking up petals and letting them drop on her to kind of cleanse herself of the problem. And then it happens.
Now, you mentioned the taking off the wedding dress, and there is a little bit of nudity in this play. Was that a problem in Cuba?
Not at all. It wasn't. We were a little nervous. I mean, some of the actors, I know the actor who played Giuliano, Kyle Toomey, Giuliano is the sort of nephew, and he's very flamboyant and clearly gay.
Yeah, right. I remember.
And he didn't know. He asked. He said, "Do you think how is that seen? Is there going to be any kind of point of view that the Cubans are going to have that is going to be difficult for us?" And I thought I told him I didn't think so, and the world is full of all sorts of kinds of people, and I'm sure Cuba is not that different. In terms of the nudity, I was able to see about 3 different shows at the festival, and many of the students were able to see a few more. But I think every show had nudity in it. There were 3 shows that we saw that had quite a bit of blood. And a couple of wedding dresses. So apparently, it's an international theme.
Yes. So how many other companies were there?
Gosh, I don't.
Oh, it was a lot of companies. Huh?
A lot of companies. I mean, I would guess probably 20 to 30 companies from all over the world.
And the students got to see some of those productions.
Yeah.
Were they able to interact with the other people?
A little bit. Unfortunately, the organization of the festival, I'm sure, was very difficult, and it wasn't terribly well done, to be honest. Most of the productions were scheduled at exactly the same time. So, and then that, of course, counted out the hour or so before you put up your show, because you've got to go and get in costume and do all your prep work. So there wasn't an ability too much to interact, because all of the groups were busy putting their shows together. We also played the first weekend of the festival and had to come back immediately following. So there was another week and a half. That there's always those sports in the Olympics that, like, I feel bad for those athletes who are like the first ones, and then they're done, and they often have to go home.
And what kind of response did you get?
I have to say, it was thrilling. It was. There was a lot of great press coverage, as it turns out. I think we were one of only 2 or 3 American companies there, and so I think that had something to do with it. So we were on Cuban television, we were on radio, and a couple of the students actually got recognized through the week from early, television coverage of it. But as it happened, we had 3 performances, and I think the theater sat maybe 150, maybe 200, and we were full all 3 nights. Maybe the first one was not quite totally full, but the other nights, people on the floor, and we're having to keep aisles clear for entrances, and there's that sort of, I think of it as kind of a cliche. There's a sort of bravo that happens in an ovation that seems particularly foreign to me, and we heard it, and they loved it. We had an ambassador from Ghana there, a film icon, an icon of Cuban film, some acting teachers from the University of the Arts, and then just regular Cuban folks who come to me after the show and would talk to me about how much they loved the sort of physicality, the language. I had this one man, this older gentleman, who came to me and said, "You're the director of the show," and his English was very broken. He said, "I'm a great fan of American literature, and I've read a lot, but I've never seen a whole play in English, and this was just so clear and so beautiful." And then he said, "I have a favor to ask. Could I come tomorrow night and bring my son? Because I think he should see this play." And I said, "Yes, of course, please come, and please be my guest." And he came back with his son, and to me, that was, if I can reach across some kind of culture with our work and get that kind of response, was great.
Were there any differences between the Cuban production and the one that Bob and I saw?
2. Well, the flowers. But I think the funniest change for me was, there's this moment where Piero comes to intercept the newly arrived grooms, and he's going to negotiate with them to try to save the bride's lives. And in the script, he says, "Do you like a Cuban?" referring to a cigar. But of course, we're in Cuba, so they probably don't call them Cubans. They probably just call them cigars. And so going through it when we were there, I said to the actor, I said, "Kyle, I think we don't need to say it. And you can just, you can say, would you like a cigar? And he names a couple of brands of famous Cuban cigars. And he pulls it out, his one cigar. And the actor made sure that he had the exact brand from that Piero has in the play. He was very excited. This is a Partagas, Jef. This is a Partagas. And so he pulled it out, and every night that line killed. People loved it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Unfortunately, even though this is a long interview, we've run out of time. But we are thrilled to have had you and thrilled to have heard about this wonderful trip that you went on.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And we'll be watching the mail and the email for your thoughts in theater in this program and for items for the calendar. Send them to 2 on the Aisle, HEC TV, 3221 McKelvey Road, Bridgeton, Missouri, 63044, or by email to tota@hectv.org.
Join Deborah Sharn for more news about theater on the KDHX podcast, Break a Leg, Theater in St. Louis and Beyond. And find more news about all the arts on State of the Arts on HEC TV on Sundays and Thursdays at 7 p.m.
Catch Bob's reviews on KDHX.
Catch both of us next time on cable and the web to end the old and welcome the new.
We'll see you then.